People often believe they can hide their emotions beneath a mask of strength, pride, or detachment. They assume that if they say the right words, act the right way, or post the right images, the world will believe they've moved on. But there's a universal law you can't outsmart. Emotion doesn't lie. No matter how much someone pretends, no matter how carefully they shape the surface of their life, energy, their emotional frequency, will always reveal the truth. You can wear the suit of indifference, but your presence will betray the storm that still lives inside you. When someone is truly at peace, their energy is clean, unbothered, light. They do not feel the need to prove anything. They do not go out of their way to be seen. They do not hover in your digital shadows wondering what you're doing. But when someone says they've moved on, and yet their energy still gravitates toward you, whether through glances, mentions, curiosity, or subtle forms of control, it's not closure, it's not peace, it's performance. It's easy to mistake silence for healing, distance for indifference, or busyness for moving on. But energy cannot be masked the way behavior can. Look at the moments when their guard is down, the brief pauses, the delayed reactions, the small emotional leaks that reveal what they're trying to suppress. It could be in how their tone shifts when you're mentioned. It could be in the quiet pauses they take when asked about you. It could be in how they suddenly feel the need to prove they're happy or fulfilled by sharing pictures, flaunting connections, or over-explaining their new routines. None of that is emotional neutrality. That's not peace. That's unresolved attachment dressed in pride. When someone has let go, there's no emotional resistance. There's no charge. You no longer trigger a reaction in them because they've processed it, released it, and moved forward. But when someone claims they've moved on and yet still responds to your energy, whether you're present or not, they're revealing their hand without realizing it. Emotion lives in the gaps of logic. You can control your words, but you can't control your vibration. That's why people often say, I just felt something, even when no words were exchanged. Because emotion speaks in frequency. You feel what's real, even if nothing is said. This is why you must never be deceived by outward actions alone. You have to feel people's energy. Listen beyond the words. The words are often rehearsed. The smiles can be false. The actions may be curated, but energy is immediate, it's real time, it's honest, and it always tells you what's still unfinished. Even avoidance is energy. Ignoring you completely can be a stronger sign of emotional disturbance than reaching out. A person who truly feels nothing will move on with clarity, not with avoidance. Avoidance is still a form of connection. It's a subconscious attempt to distance oneself from something that still holds emotional weight. The complete absence of emotional charge, not coldness, not silence, but true neutrality is what healing looks like. And that neutrality doesn't come from suppression, it comes from processing. It comes from looking within, not performing outward. He might never admit it, he might never say he's still thinking of you, but his body language will betray him. His behavior patterns will give it away. His reactions will speak louder than his words ever could. It might be the way he suddenly disappears when you succeed, or how he becomes uncomfortable when others bring you up. It could be the strange sense of tension when your name enters the room. These are all signs that energy is still moving in your direction, even if he's trying to block the flow. This is also why you can't afford to base your own healing on what they appear to be doing. Don't look to see if they're in a new relationship. Don't watch what they post. Don't measure your worth against their performance. Because if they haven't dealt with their truth, that new relationship is not love, it's escape. If they haven't faced the emotional residue you left behind, their next chapter is just a copy-paste version of their unhealed self. And eventually, the energy will catch up. It always does. That's not revenge. That's universal law. What you suppress, you carry. What you avoid, you become. And what you fake, you eventually expose through patterns, reactions, and frequency. People can rehearse detachment, but they can't rehearse peace. They can stage happiness, but they can't fabricate stillness. Stillness isn't loud. It doesn't chase validation. It doesn't need a crowd. Stillness is quiet. It's confident. It doesn't flinch when your name is spoken. And until a person reaches that stillness, everything else is performance. You don't need to call it out. You don't need to confront it. Just feel it. Because when someone pretends to move on, it's not what they say that matters. It's what their energy is still doing in your presence. Emotion will always speak, even when the mouth is closed. When someone claims to be over you, pay close attention to what happens when you go silent. Words mean very little in the face of stillness. People say things to protect their pride, to look strong, to avoid vulnerability. But silence, true silence, reveals what speech tries to hide. If he truly moved on, your silence wouldn't matter. But if that silence bothers him, triggers him, or pulls him back into your orbit in subtle or obvious ways, that's the one sign that betrays everything he pretends to be. His reaction to your absence is far more telling than anything he ever said during the relationship. You see, people who are genuinely done do not circle back to see if you've noticed their departure. They do not hover on your social media. They do not ask mutual friends about you. They don't invent reasons to bump into you again. They don't find reasons to check your story, your status, or the sound of your name. But when someone is still attached, even if they don't fully understand why, they can't handle being truly invisible to you. That silence becomes deafening. And what's more, it becomes threatening. Because suddenly, he's not in control of the narrative anymore. You're not giving him the reaction he counted on. You're not chasing. You're not reaching. You've become still. And stillness is power when you go silent. And he begins to react. Whether that's reaching out with meaningless messages, liking old photos, finding excuses to talk to mutual acquaintances, or trying to provoke some kind of emotional response, it means your energy still affects him. This is not always a conscious decision on his part. It's deeper than that. It's the emotional imprint you left on him rising to the surface. Because silence isn't passive. It's not just the absence of words. It's the loudest message you can send without saying anything. Silence creates space. And in that space, people have to confront what they feel when you are no longer available to serve as their emotional outlet, their comfort zone, their ego boost. Sometimes the reaction is delayed. He might act cold for days, weeks, even months. He might try to prove to himself and to others that your absence doesn't bother him. But silence works slowly. It creeps in, it settles, it becomes a mirror. Because while you may be moving forward in truth, He's still trying to move on through performance. And when you don't play your part in that performance, when you remove your presence, he's left alone on stage. That's when the cracks begin to show. He starts questioning himself. He starts seeking validation. He starts wondering if he really had the power he thought he did. Because suddenly, he's no longer being watched. He's no longer being admired. And his performance loses its audience. Your silence breaks the illusion. It forces truth to rise. Because when someone is emotionally detached from a connection, they don't seek signs from the past. They don't need closure from someone else. They don't feel unsettled when there's no contact. But when someone is still emotionally tethered, silence is the one thing they cannot stand. It disturbs them. It provokes questions. It awakens, and more than that, it exposes their internal chaos. They may pretend they're happy. They may be with someone new. But if they react to your absence, it means your energy is still present in their mind. Understand that silence is not a strategy. It's a statement. It's a reflection of self-respect, of emotional maturity, of no longer engaging in the cycles that once drained you. It's the refusal to keep feeding a story that no longer serves your growth. And when he feels that shift, when he senses you've pulled back not out of spite, but out of strength, that's when he starts showing you his real emotional state. He might reach out with something small, an emoji, a random question, a vague comment meant to hook your attention. He might try to reappear through humor, nostalgia, or even anger. But all of it is still a response to your silence. That's the one sign that cuts through all the noise. Silence doesn't just create distance. It forces the other person to feel the weight of their own emotions without distraction. If he can sit in that silence and feel nothing, then yes, maybe he has truly moved on. But if he stirs in that space, if he flinches at the lack of access, if he scrambles to reclaim your attention in small or large ways, that is not peace. That is not closure. That is unresolved attachment, wearing the mask of strength. People expect you to beg, to chase, to explain, to fight for clarity. When you don't, when you simply stop engaging, you remove the illusion that they were still in control. And if his emotions were truly settled, if he was at peace with himself and with you, none of your silence would register as a threat. But when he reacts, when he suddenly cares about what you're doing, where you are, or who you're with, that's when the truth slips through. That's when everything he's pretending to be collapses under the pressure of your stillness. Silence becomes your most powerful revelation, not because you intended to expose him, but because his own feelings couldn't stay hidden when your energy stopped feeding the connection. People often underestimate how powerful routine patterns are in revealing a person's emotional state. A man can act like he's moved on, dress the part, speak with certainty, even surround himself with new faces, but watch closely and you'll see the patterns never lie. They're habits of the heart. When someone pretends to move on but starts replicating the same experiences you once shared together, that's not coincidence. It's emotional residue echoing through repetition. If he takes it to the same places you two used to go, listens to the same songs you introduced him to, uses phrases you once said, or adopts behaviors that mirror the relationship you had, what you're seeing is the ghost of an attachment that never left. This isn't healing. This is imitation. When someone's heart has truly detached, their habits shift, their rhythm changes. They evolved in alignment with their growth. But when a man continues to walk in the same footprints he made with you, just with someone new beside him, He's not moving forward. He's reliving. That's not transformation. That's substitution. You can replace the person, but not the energy. You can change the face, but if the experience still smells, sounds, and feels like the past, then the past is still living in him. He's not replacing you because he's over you. He's trying to duplicate what you gave him, thinking it will make the pain less noticeable. But you can't recreate peace with chaos in your heart. You can't manufacture closure by mimicking what once felt real. It's subtle at first. Maybe he starts dressing like he did when you complimented his style. Maybe he starts hanging out at places where he knows you might be, not to talk, but to be seen. Maybe he posts pictures with captions that mimic things you used to say, or does things with his new partner that look eerily familiar. He may not even be fully aware he's doing it. But repetition is the subconscious seeking familiarity, safety, and emotional shelter. He's not chasing newness. He's clinging to the fragments of what made him feel alive when he was with you. That's not detachment. That's longing in disguise. People pretend they're okay because it's easier than facing the truth. It's easier to convince the world they're over you than to admit they feel empty without you. So they try to find comfort in the known. But here's the thing. Comfort is not the same as healing. Just because someone tries to replicate the good moments doesn't mean they've processed the pain. In fact, the more they cling to those rituals, the more obvious it becomes they're trying to hold on to something they said they let go of. And when a man keeps trying to recreate the emotional ecosystem you built with him, it's because the imprint you left is still fresh. You don't replicate what you've erased. You'll only recreate what still lives in your emotional body. You'll know it's true because there's no innovation in his behavior. It's not inspired by new growth. It's not driven by evolution. It's repetitive, predictable, and often forced. It lacks soul. It's a shell. You'll recognize the version of you he's trying to build in someone else or in himself. And you'll feel the discomfort in that familiarity. But don't confuse it for flattery. Understand what it means. It's not love. It's not even obsession. It's unresolved energy looking for a place to land. It's a man who said he was done, but whose habits reveal otherwise. Even the conversations he has might mirror what you used to share. The kind of jokes, the specific spots, the timing of messages, or the way he talks about life, relationships, or values, it might sound oddly familiar. That's not growth. That's a blueprint from your time together being replayed because it's still the most emotionally meaningful connection he's had. It was never just about presence. It was about emotional memory. And emotional memory doesn't fade just because someone tries to silence it. It returns through repetition. You see, healing changes your rhythm. It shifts your identity. You no longer need to echo the past because you're building from a new place. But when a man is stuck, still attached, still emotionally anchored, he walks in circles. He tries to dress the same love in new clothes, hoping it'll feel different. But energy doesn't lie. And repetition always reveals what words try to cover up. When someone says they're over you, but keeps repeating the relationship in fragments, they haven't moved on. They've just created a loop they don't know how to break. The restaurants, the playlists, the conversations, even the emotional tone. If they haven't evolved, then neither has he. He might be surrounded by new people, but the old energy follows him. Patterns don't lie. They whisper the truth loud enough for anyone paying attention to hear. Sometimes the loudest proof that someone hasn't truly moved on is in their attempt to provoke you. It comes in the form of subtle jabs, indirect messages, sudden displays of success, and carefully curated moments that seem almost engineered to get your attention. This isn't coincidence. It's a calculated attempt to stir a response, because someone who is genuinely over you has no need to get under your skin. If he's trying to make you feel something, jealousy, regret, curiosity, then he's still entangled in the emotional web you both once shared. Provocation is not closure. It's a silent confession that the emotions still live under the surface. You begin to notice it when he starts posting things he never used to care about. Flashing pictures with new people. Quoting lyrics that seem to echo your old arguments. Sharing things online that almost feel like inside jokes turned outside. It's not a random act. It's strategic. It's emotional marketing. And it's designed with one goal: to make you look, react, feel, whether he admits it or not, whether he masks it under confidence or indifference. This behavior is rooted in a desire for validation. If he truly moved on, you wouldn't be his target audience. But when you're still the one he wants to impress, upset, or reach, it's because your presence still matters more than he'll admit. People who have found peace don't perform. They don't compete with their past. They don't go out of their way to trigger someone they no longer care about. But when he pretends to be over you and simultaneously does everything to remind you that he's doing better, he's not moving on. He's masking pain. Because real healing is quiet. It's humble. It doesn't need an audience. But provocation is a desperate whisper disguised as strength. It's rooted in the fear that you might truly be letting go. And he needs to know you still care, even if the only way to get that confirmation is to make you angry, sad, or confused. He might say he doesn't care, but the energy never lies. If he's watching your stories, responding to your silence with passive aggression, or finding ways to show up where he knows you might see him, he's reacting, not acting, and there's a difference. Reaction always reveals attachment. You don't try to disturb what you're indifferent to. So when he does these little things, the staged photos, the casual updates about his amazing life, the cryptic posts that sound like they were meant for you, it's because he's still emotionally tied. He's not communicating with the world. He's communicating with you without directly saying your name. There's a quiet emotional immaturity in this behavior. It's what happens when someone doesn't know how to process pain or disappointment in a healthy way. Instead of going inward to reflect and heal, he projects outward to provoke and control. It's an emotional tug of war where he pulls the rope, hoping you'll grab the other end. And the moment you react, whether through anger, sadness, or even curiosity, he wins a temporary sense of relevance. That's what this is about. Staying relevant in your emotional world, even if only through conflict or confusion. Because if he can't have your love, he'll settle for your attention. And provocation doesn't always look aggressive. Sometimes it's subtle. Mentioning things he knows will affect you. Appearing happy but overly so. Responding to your silence with loud celebrations. It's like he's trying too hard to prove something, but what he's really revealing is that something inside him is still unsettled. If he were truly content, there'd be no need for the theatrics. But his need to be seen by you in this way shows that you're still a reference point for his self-worth. He may not want you back, but he doesn't want you to forget either. He doesn't want to be erased from your emotional memory. So he keeps finding ways to show up, even indirectly. You'll also notice that when your energy no longer feeds the cycle, when you stop reacting or stop playing the emotional chess game, his efforts either intensify or suddenly stop altogether. That shift tells you everything. Because someone who's genuinely indifferent wouldn't escalate when ignored. But someone who's still emotionally invested can't handle the vacuum your silence creates. So they provoke, hoping you'll give them something to hold on to, even if it's just your anger. It's not about moving on, it's about not being left behind. It's not about forgetting you, it's about making sure you haven't forgotten them. The truth is, people who are emotionally whole don't need to prove it. They live it. They grow quietly, love freely, and release the past with grace. But when a man keeps trying to ignite an emotional response, even in subtle, disguised ways, that's the residue of a connection still trying to resolve itself. He may never say it out loud. He may never admit he still cares. But his actions speak for him. And when those actions are crafted with you in mind, even when you're no longer around, it's not freedom. It's evidence that part of him is still living in the story he claims he's already finished reading. There's a unique discomfort that comes when someone who claimed they've moved on starts to exhibit erratic emotional behavior. It's the inconsistency that begins to tell on them. They might act cold and indifferent one day, then send a long, emotionally charged message the next. One moment they act like you don't exist, and the next, they're suddenly overly emotional, angry, hurt, nostalgic, or even passive-aggressively sentimental. This kind of erratic emotional pattern doesn't point to healing, it points to inner turmoil. When someone has truly moved on, they find emotional neutrality. Their reactions aren't wild waves. They're calm waters. But when emotions swing from one extreme to another, when the mask of indifference keeps slipping off, that's a telltale sign that they're still battling with what they feel but won't admit. The truth is, emotional instability after a breakup doesn't arise from peace. It arises from conflict, internal conflict that the person doesn't know how to express clearly. One minute they're trying to convince themselves and the world that they're done, that they found better, that they're happy. The next minute they're acting out of pain, reaching out in moments of weakness, or reacting strongly to things that shouldn't even register if they were truly detached. They might lash out when they see you doing well, or suddenly go silent after being overly expressive. That push and pull, that emotional chaos, is their real truth peeking through the performance. When a person is done, they're done. Their emotions no longer fluctuate based on what you do or don't do. But when they're still emotionally invested, they become reactive. They watch, they wait, and they respond to your movements like a shadow trying to keep up with a light it can't control. And sometimes that reaction isn't even intentional. It comes out in unexpected bursts. Jealousy, mood swings, over-explaining, defensiveness, or even hostility when there's no cause. You might wonder why something so small triggers such a big response from someone who claimed they don't care. That's because care hasn't disappeared. It's been buried under pride, ego, and emotional confusion. You'll often see these erratic emotions surface when they least expect it. Maybe they hear your name in a conversation and their whole demeanor shifts. Maybe they see something that reminds them of you and their face gives away more than their words. Maybe someone mentions you and suddenly their tone changes, either too casual or overly intense. These are emotional tremors from unresolved feeling. A healed heart remains composed, but a conflicted heart reacts without consent. And that's how you know. Because despite all their efforts to seem unaffected, their emotions refuse to cooperate. Erratic behavior is also seen in how they deal with your silence. Someone who's at peace with your absence doesn't try to disturb it, but someone who's still affected by it might fluctuate between ignoring you and finding ways to get your attention. They might block you one day, unblock you the next. They might speak badly about you to others, but still secretly keep tabs on your life. They might get defensive if someone speaks kindly about you, or act overly joyful if they hear you're struggling. These emotional shifts don't come from detachment. They come from an inner conflict that still centers around you. Even their new relationships aren't immune to these emotional bursts. You might see them jumping quickly into something new, overly affectionate in public, making grand gestures, but it feels excessive, almost like a show. That's because they're not operating from stability, they're operating from instability, dressed up as happiness. And when things don't go as planned, or the new connection fails to fill the void, their emotional responses become even more erratic. They might suddenly reappear in your life with confusion, regret, or mixed signals. It's not about love anymore. It's about the emotional chaos that remains unresolved. The emotional inconsistency isn't just confusing, it's revealing. It shows that beneath the surface, they're wrestling with emotions they haven't fully processed. The anger, the sadness, the need to be seen, the need to prove something, all of it stems from a place that hasn't healed. They might even contradict themselves, saying they don't care, while asking about you, saying they're done, while reminiscing about old times, claiming peace, while throwing emotional jabs. Words become unreliable when emotions are unstable. But if you pay attention to the rhythm, the highs and lows, the mixed messages, the random moments of vulnerability, you'll see it clearly. The truth isn't in what they say. It's in how wildly their emotions shift around you. Someone who has truly moved on doesn't live in emotional extremes. They're not trying to prove, provoke, or punish. But when a man swings emotionally in response to your presence or absence, he's not free from the connection. He's imprisoned by what's unresolved. His erratic behavior is the emotional fingerprint of unfinished business. The heart always speaks even when the mouth says otherwise. And those emotional outbursts, the inconsistency, the unpredictable reactions, they're all evidence that moving on was just a mask, not a milestone. When a man pretends to move on, one of the most revealing signs lies not in what he says or how he acts in public, but in the way his energy shifts when he sees you thriving. It's the silent discomfort he feels when your life begins to glow without him in it. You may not hear him say it, you may not see him post anything that hints at regret, but energy never lies. The aura changes. His demeanor shifts when he hears about your success, your peace, or your growth. You'll notice a subtle irritation, a forced indifference, or a passive, aggressive undertone when your name is mentioned in a room. That's not peace speaking, that's emotional disturbance masked behind a wall of pride. The truth is, when someone has truly moved on, your progress doesn't shake them. But if he's still secretly invested, your evolution becomes his discomfort. That discomfort often shows up as backhanded compliments or unexpected silence. He may hear about something great happening in your life, and instead of a genuine congratulations, he'll downplay it or ignore it altogether. It's not that he doesn't see it, it's that he feels it too deeply to express. The growth you've embraced without his presence is a reminder of what he lost, of what he could not destroy, and of what he no longer influences. That kind of silent realization stings the ego in ways words can't explain, especially if he thought you would break down, chase him, or live in regret. Instead, you moved forward, and not just moved on, but upward. You became lighter, sharper, more focused. That growth carries an energy that disrupts the comfort of someone pretending not to care. Even if he seems composed on the outside, energy has a way of breaking through the mask. He might flinch internally when your name lights up in a conversation. He might withdraw when mutual friends praise you. He might go strangely quiet when someone mentions how well you're doing. That's his energy rejecting a truth he hasn't come to terms with. Because deep down, he wanted you to need him. He wanted you to spiral without him. Your strength was supposed to crumble. But now it's intimidating. It's not just that you moved on. It's that you evolved beyond the emotional space he thought he could keep you in. And nothing reveals a man's true feelings like the discomfort he experiences in the face of your unapologetic growth. Energy is subtle, but it's precise. He might even begin to mirror your movements unconsciously. You start posting content that radiates confidence, and suddenly he's trying to do the same. You start living more intentionally, and he starts overperforming in his new life. That's not coincidence. It's emotional response. It's competitive energy birthed from unresolved feelings. You're not in his life anymore. He still orbits the memory of your presence, even if he's too proud to admit it. And that emotional orbit often pulls him into erratic behavior disguised as strength. But underneath it all is a current of envy, admiration, confusion, and longing. Because your glow has now become a mirror to his emotional stagnation. The uneasiness grows stronger when you remain silent. Silence is powerful, but most people don't know how to sit with it. Especially those who hoped you would seek validation from their attention. When you don't chase, when you don't explain, when you simply rise, your energy says everything your words never needed to. That silent strength rattles someone who thought they held emotional power over you. Now they're left trying to decode your silence while pretending they don't notice your presence. But they notice. They always notice. The difference is you're no longer responding to their energy, you're commanding your own. And that kind of shift speaks louder than any conversation ever could. What really disturbs him isn't that you've changed, is that you've transformed in ways he can't access. He may see glimpses of your glow through others, through social media, through quiet whispers in social circles, and each time he does, the same thought returns. She's not who she was when she loved me. That realization is heavy, because it means you've transcended the version of yourself that tolerated confusion, manipulation, inconsistency. You're no longer reachable in the ways he once knew. And for someone who never thought he'd lose emotional access to you, that revelation becomes a silent torment. He may try to reappear, not with an apology, but with subtle attempts to reconnect. Liking your posts, sending vague messages, or trying to spark small conversations. But it's not about reconciliation. It's about checking if he still matters. He wants to know if his energy still holds space in your world. That need to be acknowledged is an admission, whether he knows it or not. But your growth has changed the frequency. What once disturbed your peace now barely grazes your energy. And that distance between his emotional chaos and your grounded strength becomes the loudest evidence of all. You outgrew what he couldn't fix within himself. That's why the energy is unsettled. Because you didn't just survive the pain, you transformed through it. And that kind of transformation is the one thing he can't ignore, no matter how much he pretends to.